Hi, I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're here with David Stump from Real by Fake. David is a visual effects supervisor. Hello, David.
Good morning, good afternoon.
I'm glad that you took the time to chat. I know that you're very busy. I know that you have been working on, well, you worked on the morning show, correct?
And after that, I worked on Little Fires Everywhere.
Which both got a lot of Emmy love recently.
Oh my goodness, did they ever. And when the COVID shutdown started, I had just transitioned off of Little Fires Everywhere to go to work on, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of the show or not. I'll leave it anonymous, but it was a movie that was to be filmed in Bangladesh. And I was in Bangladesh in March, well, in late January, February and March. In early March, we were scouting locations in Bangladesh, and the shutdown started to happen. So one of our producers was in transit from LA to Dhaka, going through Heathrow in London, and they shut down his outgoing flight to Dhaka. And then they started shutting down other flights all over the world. So he called the studio and they huddled for about 20 minutes. And then he called me on my cell in Chittagong, Bangladesh, and said, get in the van, go to the overnight hotel, pack your stuff, get in the van and go to the Chittagong airport. We're flying you to Dhaka. Go to that hotel and pack all of that stuff and be ready to get out of town by midnight. And on that much notice, they started booking flights. And at 3 a.m. in Dhaka, I flew to Doha, Qatar, from Doha to Philadelphia, and from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. It was 35 hours of travel.
Good Lord. What's the status of that film now? Did they finish shooting? Are they doing it other ways?
No, it's been on hold since. And what is the status of any film right now?
Yeah.
What is the status of any television show right now? You know, it's kind of studio by studio, project by project. Some areas of the world are starting up production again. New Zealand apparently is a haven right now because they have no or very little COVID. So they're able to shoot some projects there, including Jim Cameron's next two movies. But in the meantime, I have been at home since March 12th.
But you've been still working, right? Aren't you directing a commercial now?
I'm co-directing a commercial. I also can't say what the name of that is for a product, but the studio is in Florida and I'm directing over Zoom. And on the stage out there, they have multiple what we call snowball cameras, which are dome cameras that pan, tilt, and zoom that are controllable over IP, so that I can look around the stage, I can jockey the camera, I can pan it, I can tilt it, I can zoom it to see what I'm looking at. Our DIT has an amazing cart set up there where he controls everything over the internet from Carolina. So he's remote running the DIT cart. The directors are remote directing. The visual effects producer from Real by Fake is remote producing from San Fernando Valley. And we are making a commercial over Zoom.
It's amazing, and I have a feeling it's the way that things are going to go. So what do you see trend-wise, practices that are being innovated now that'll probably stick with us even past the COVID crisis?
Well, this for sure, and there are several new technologies that are coming online and starting to mature to send full bandwidth camera signal across oceans and continents in real time. And it is absolutely amazing to see. I participated in a car commercial shooting on the tarmac at a little private airport in Dublin, Ireland last month. And I could see the camera feed like I was sitting on set. It was amazing.
So how do you feel about that? I mean, obviously you're used to traveling a lot. How do you like the idea of maybe not traveling so much and still doing the work that you love?
Listen, as long as there is COVID and as long as airplanes are petri dishes, it's much safer to stay at home and work this way. Uh, but at the same time, somebody's got to be at the other end of the Zoom call, moving lights and setting flags and rolling in props and setting sets up and green screens up and blue screens up. So what it really is doing is it's forcing us to work a little more serially, if you know what I mean by that. Where before, when we were shooting, you could give directions to two or three departments and say, okay, everybody go, fire and forget. And the grips would go do this, and the gaffers would go do that, and the set department would go do this. But now everyone has to stay socially distanced. So each department works one after the other. Instead of parallel, we're working serially.
That makes sense. So before I let you go, what other trends do you see in visual effects that have have nothing to do with COVID? Just the way that things are moving along, people using game engines to do more work?
I'm doing another project, actually, which is an Electronic Arts Unreal Engine mega grant short film. And we are using game engine technology to drive LED walls to do some of our photography. And I've been doing these kinds of shoots for a while. In fact, we used LED walls as lighting instruments on the morning show. And we put up our driving background plates to light the scenes synchronously with the playback of the plates against green screen. And it works incredibly well. It kind of dictates that cinematographers become compositors on set. But that's okay. I think it should have always been that way. And control over the image is what cinematographers do. Controlling their images, controlling the contrast, the color, the perspective, the granularity. So this is a natural progression of the craft. It is technically intense right now, but what new technology hasn't been born as technically challenging, only to be tamed by people who write interfaces and graphical user interfaces. So I think it will simplify as it moves forward. But I think we've passed the point that I call the light bulb moment, where you see directors and producers and cinematographers and filmmakers in general look at a technology and you see the light bulb go on over their head. And you see people, you can read their mind. You can read them thinking, I get it. Now I get it. I even have a name for the moment, but it kind of, it's a literary reference. I don't know if you've ever read Stranger in a Strange Land. Oh, it's a brilliant sci-fi book. I was always a big sci-fi fan, but there is a term that came from Stranger in a Strange Land. It's the grok moment, G-R-O-K. When we finish, look it up. You'll get a kick out of it.
I will, absolutely. And so when you began your career, was it on the, because you're a member of the ASC, were you a cinematographer first and then started working in VFX, or the other way around?
I've always bounced between the two worlds. Um, the first entire movie that I ever shot was for Roger Corman uh, back in the day. So I would go from shooting little Roger Corman movies. I'll give you an example. In one year, I shot a Roger Corman movie, and then my very next job was to go to Israel and Yuma and then back to Hollywood on Rambo 3 as the visual effects cinematographer and visual effects supervisor. And at the time, Rambo 3 was the most expensive movie ever made with the biggest movie star in Hollywood. So I would go from a little movie to a huge movie to a little movie to a huge movie. And the trick to doing that is to not let either set of producers know that you did the other thing. Because Hollywood dearly loves a pigeonhole.
Yes, they do. They certainly do. But you've broken that mold a bit, which is very cool. Thank you for sharing your experiences and some of your recent projects. And people should know that the morning show, which people are supposed to think was shot in New York, actually was shot in LA, which is amazing.
On stage at Sony. And there are so many new things that are happening in technology now, not just LED walls and game engine. I also have to mention a project that the Academy Open Source Foundation are doing called Open Timeline IO, OTIO, which is a system that aggregates metadata from the moment a project begins all the way through post and all the way through editing and into post-production. And it is not very well known right now, but it's going to be a huge, valuable development. And it is the first opportunity that Hollywood are going to have to actually achieve some new savings in a new way to actually save money making films.
Very cool. David, thank you for taking the time. I know you have to get onto Zoom and start directing, so I will let you go. But it was great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.